Welcome to the Success in Africa podcast with Dr. Modupe, your weekly dose of leadership vitamins to make you successful in Africa.
Hello, and welcome to the Success in Africa podcast, episode 9. My name is Dr. Modupe Taylor Pierce, and I am a scholar and practitioner of leadership and organizational development. Simply put, I study what makes people successful. I have been studying this for 3 decades with a particular focus on people in Africa. And in this podcast, I will share stories, lessons, and insights about people having success in Africa. Why this podcast? Because I am sick and tired of Africa being the poorest continent in the world. We are blessed with the greatest resource, young people. Africa will soon have the largest number of working age people in the world. And when these people achieve success, Africa's wealth will be unparalleled. Why? Because I don't know of too many Africans whose goal in life it is to die poor. You see, success in life is simply the achievement of a predetermined goal. Whether that goal is creating employment for 10,000 people or transforming your country into a high-income country, this podcast has been created to help you to achieve it. So if you are serious about achieving success in Africa, I want you to subscribe to this channel. If you like this video after you have watched it, please click the like button. This podcast is brought to you courtesy of BCA Leadership, the largest leadership enhancement company in Africa. If you have questions that you want me to answer after watching this video, just log on to BCA Online, the link is on the screen, and post your questions there. That is where I will respond to your questions. Over the next 4 weeks, we are going to explore success in public service in Africa. We started this podcast with 4 episodes on general leadership success principles. And then for episodes 5 to 8, we focused on foundational success principles for entrepreneurs. That special breed of crazy people who believe beyond boundaries. They hunt problems and find solutions, and they are equity rich and cash poor. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I encourage you to go back and watch the previous episodes so you can learn a few tips that you need to be a successful entrepreneur in Africa. Now, for episodes 9 to 12, we are going to take a closer look as to how to be successful in public service in Africa. Not everybody wants to be successful in Africa. Define success as building a big business or having lots of money. For some people, success is found in public service. Perhaps transforming your country or serving your community. So, for those of you who feel called to public service and want to be successful there, these 4 episodes are for you. Today's episode is based on this insight. Pot-bellied leaders are bad for Africa. Let me say that again. Pot-bellied leaders are bad for Africa. See, if you see a pot-bellied public servant or politician, run away from him. Do not elect him or select him for high office. Why? Because this person's pot-belly is an indication of a fundamental character flaw necessary for success in public service, and that is a lack of self-discipline. You see, self-discipline is a critically important ingredient for effective and successful public servants, because in public service, you are a steward of resources of the state. And if you don't have the discipline to say no to your personal desires, you will eventually find yourself stealing money from the state or sexually exploiting vulnerable women in the community or abusing power of your office just to make someone else suffer because you think they have disrespected you. All of these personal desires result in the impoverishment of your fellow citizens, and your country and community will be worse off when you behave in that manner. So why the potbelly indicator? Because a potbelly is typical of a man who needs to exercise regularly and does not, and who has access to more food than he needs and indulges in it. Most of what you need to know in order to maintain good physical health, that is, eat healthy and regular exercise. And most of us want to be healthy. Nobody wants to spend any part of their life in a hospital. And so, why do some of us indulge in eating amounts that are not good for us and failing to exercise when we should? It is because of a lack of self-discipline. That is why a pot-bellied leader is bad for Africa, because a pot-belly is an indication of a lack of self-discipline, and self-discipline is essential for success and positive impact in public sector. Let me illustrate this with the story of Justice Chifundo Kachale of Malawi. Justice Chifundo Kachale is a judge of the High Court of Malawi and currently serves as the chairman of the Malawi Electoral Commission. He became the chair of the commission in 2020 at a time when Malawi was facing a major constitutional crisis. The national and presidential elections of 2019, which had been presided over by the then Commissioner Jane Ansah, and resulted in the incumbent president Peter Mutharika being declared the winner. These elections had been declared null and void by the Supreme Court of Malawi after evidence of elections malpractices and mishandling of results had created widespread calls for the nullification of the elections within Malawi. The international observers had declared the elections free and fair, and when the Supreme Court nullified the elections, the COVID crisis had just begun, and Malawi, like many countries in the world, was in the midst of confusion and fear about COVID, and travel was severely restricted. It was into this crisis that Justice Kachale was plunged when he was appointed to be the head of the Malawi Electoral Commission. What a poison chalice. How would he be able to organize an election without international observers? Well, Justice Kachale declared that the purpose and beneficiaries of elections are not international observers, but the Malawian citizens. And since the Malawian citizens were still in Malawi despite COVID, the elections will be organized for them. How would he be able to conduct elections with little or no international funding? Justice Kachale rallied his team to be careful and responsible stewards of the meager funds that were placed at their disposal by the state, and he conducted the elections successfully. He was appointed to the position by President Mutharika, yet he conducted the elections fairly, and the winner of the elections was the challenger, Lazarus Chakwera. It took incredible courage and self-discipline for Justice Kachale to withstand the immense pressure and opportunities for unethical self-enrichment that were presented to him by powerful people inside and outside Malawi, and to still conduct free and fair and credible elections that the people of Malawi today hail as one of the most transparent and well-conducted elections. Self-discipline is an attribute that Justice Kachale had in full supply long before he became the chair of the Malawi Electoral Commission. He grew up with parents who were not rich and raised him to believe in the dignity of selfless service and self-discipline and delayed gratification. He became a born-again Christian while in university, and he credits his relationship with God and his fear of the Lord for the courage he has shown whenever he is put under pressure. Justice Kachale once said that his fear of God is greater than his fear of any man, and that fear makes it easier for him to make the decision to do what God says is right, even when powerful people are pressuring him to do otherwise. When I first met Justice Kachale, it was obvious to me that this was a self-disciplined man. He's not skinny or thin, and at 6'2" tall, he is reasonably well built. However, there is also no pot belly on him. even though he's over 50 years old. When we sat down for dinner at a conference together, I noted to myself how at 7 p.m., which was the scheduled time that the conference organizers organized and served as dinner, his plate, when he served at the buffet table, had only half the food that my plate had. He ate slowly. He engaged in conversation. And when he had finished his food, he did not go back to the buffet table for seconds. I learned just from observing him that here was a man who understood that at his age, eating a large meal in the evening, while pleasurable, was not ideal for his health and body, and so he ate sparingly at that time. I have to admit, I felt a little ashamed of my plate, and I made sure I did not finish what was on my plate. You see, Justice Kachale, through his self-discipline and courage, saved Malawi from an electoral crisis that could have split the nation apart. His service led to new leadership that was the will of the people of Malawi. And regardless of what your opinion is of the performance of President Chakwera, it is clear that Justice Kachale's service has benefited Malawians greatly because they have regained the agency that was taken from them in 2019. Justice Kachale may not be wealthy, but he is a successful public servant who has given Malawians the dignity of knowing that they control their destiny at the ballot box. Folks, there are many African public servants who are not successful. In other words, their tenures in office do not result in positive outcomes that they themselves would desire. Their lack of self-discipline and courage leads them to make awful compromises and focus on short-term gratification rather than long-term benefit. So remember this. If you want to be successful in making a difference for your country and community in public service, check yourself for self-discipline and courage. And if you are looking to elect or appoint someone into public service, just take a look at their stomach. If it is bulging, find another candidate for the job. You and your community will be better off in the long run. This brings us to the end of our podcast for today. I look forward to receiving your comments and feedback about this podcast. Next week, I will share you another important key to achieving success in public sector in Africa. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this video. Tell your friends about it. Together, we can transform our beloved continent. See you next week.
Tomorrow belongs to those people who prepare for it today. See you next week.